On June 19, 1798, the French fleet, departing from Malta, set sail eastward toward the shores of Egypt. This massive naval convoy, consisting of over 400 heavily loaded ships of various types, stretched for many miles. Consequently, the speed of the squadron was quite slow. However, this didn't deter Admiral Bruce's sailors, as they were confident that nothing would stop them from reaching Alexandria. The entire crew's spirits are high. We've just sung revolutionary anthems together. However, it was too early for the French to celebrate. 2 days before the French left Malta, the British squadron had already entered the Bay of Naples. Sir William Hamilton, the British ambassador in Naples, urgently conveyed crucial information to Admiral Nelson. The French fleet had been spotted near Malta. Thus, the appropriate location of the French squadron was determined. At the same time, it was evident that Malta was not the French's ultimate destination, and after consulting with his senior captains, Nelson quickly concluded that the French were heading for Egypt. Although Nelson correctly anticipated the French plans, he mistakenly believed that Admiral Bruce's squadron was at least 6 days ahead of the British squadron. Therefore, Nelson decided to set sail immediately at full speed toward Alexandria. The task was simple: catch up with and destroy the French convoy. In preparation for a naval battle, Nelson ordered the squadron to be split into 2 groups. The first, commanded by Admiral Trowbridge, was to sink the French transport ships, while the second group, led by Nelson himself, was to battle Admiral Bruce's battleships. Without wasting a moment, Nelson embarked on a pursuit at full sail. On June 20th, his squadron passed through the Strait of Messina and began heading southeast. Finally, on the night of June 23rd, the courses of the 2 fleets intersected. However, neither the British nor the French had any inkling of it. At the moment of critical proximity, the distance between the fleets was just 26 nautical miles. On that night, some French sailors even heard the signal shots exchanged by the British ships. Nevertheless, luck was once again on Bonaparte's side. The dark night and the sluggishness of the convoy helped the French remain unnoticed at this very dangerous moment. Thus, completely unaware, Nelson raced past the French at high speed and continued moving eastward. In all subsequent days, the British squadron sailed at twice the speed of the heavily loaded French convoy. Eventually, on June 28th, Nelson reached Alexandria, where complete disappointment awaited him. All Nelson could find in Alexandria were a few dilapidated Turkish warships. Meanwhile, the French convoy, having bypassed the island of Candia, was leisurely approaching the shores of Egypt, and when the expedition's objective became clear to everyone, Bonaparte addressed his troops. Soldiers, you are about to undertake a conquest, the effects of which on civilization and commerce are incalculable. The blow you are about to give to England will be the most sensibly felt. We must make some fatiguing marches and fight several battles. We shall succeed in all we undertake. Destiny is with us. The people amongst whom we are going to live are Mohammedans. The first article of their faith is this: there is but one God, and Muhammad is his prophet. Do not contradict them. Behave to them as you behaved to the Jews and to the Italians. Pay respect to their muftis and their imams, as you did to the rabbis and the bishops. Extend to the ceremonies prescribed by the Quran and the mosques the same toleration which you showed to the synagogues, to the religion of Moses and of Jesus Christ. The Roman legions protected all religions. You will here find customs different from those of Europe. You must accommodate yourselves to them. The people we're going to be friends with differ from us in the treatment of women, but in all countries, anyone who violates is considered a monster. The first town we shall come to was built by Alexander. At every step, we shall meet with grand recollections. At the same time, Nelson was in Alexandria, completely unaware that those he was searching for were heading straight toward him. His frustration was immense at that moment. Teetering on the brink of a nervous breakdown, he made a decision that once again saved the French fleet. Believing that the French had gone north, he ordered his squadron to set sail immediately for the island of Cyprus. As a result, as soon as the last British ship left port, the first French frigate entered the harbor of Alexandria during the second half of the same day. Thus, both fleets once again missed each other. The main convoy approached Alexandria on July 1st. Bonaparte was informed that the British squadron had departed quite recently, so the situation remained very dangerous. By this time, the entire convoy was out of formation. Warships had mingled with transport vessels and became practically helpless. In this situation, Admiral Bruce proposed to the commander-in-chief that they start landing troops the next morning. However, Bonaparte decided not to test his luck any further, and despite unfavorable weather conditions, he ordered an immediate landing. Because the port of Alexandria was unsuited for such a large number of ships, he decided to land troops on Marabou Beach, which was approximately 8 miles west of Alexandria. The operation to land troops began around noon. The sea storm continued to worsen, and the proximity of Nelson's squadron turned this operation into a grueling ordeal that lasted all night. As a result, some boats took 8 hours to cover 3 miles. During this operation, 19 people drowned. Nevertheless, despite all the difficulties, around 8 p.m., the first French troops reached shore. They were soldiers from General Menu's division. The commander-in-chief, accompanied by Generals Berthier and Daumartin, reached shore around 1 a.m. By this time, Kleber, Menu, and Bonn had managed to land only about 4,000 men. The other boats with troops, battling the storm, slowly approached the shore. Nevertheless, the commander-in-chief believed that there was no time to waste. At 3 a.m., under a bright moon, Bonaparte reviewed the troops and then ordered Kleber, Menu, and Bonn's divisions to begin their march to Alexandria. The soldiers, exhausted after a long night of landing, without artillery and cavalry, and even without food packs, began their march through the desert. Bonaparte led the way, with General Caffarelli beside him, who limped through the sand with a wooden leg, as well as Dumas and Daumartin. On July 2nd, around 8 a.m., the French troops reached Alexandria. By this time, the heat and thirst had become unbearable. Menu's division approached the city from the west, Bonn circled Alexandria from the east, Kleber and Bonaparte in the center. Approximately 600 janissaries defended Alexandria. Some city residents also helped defend the city. Alexandria's extensive walls were quite high, but they had numerous breaches and openings through which one could penetrate the city. After an unsuccessful attempt to enter into negotiations with the city's defenders, Bonaparte, after inspecting the fortifications from Pompey's pillar pedestal, ordered his troops to attack. At around 9 a.m., even without ladders, the French troops launched an assault on Alexandria. As they approached the walls, the attackers encountered fairly strong gunfire. Stones and spears were also hurled from the city walls at the French. Several officers were killed in the first minutes of the assault. For the French soldiers, after an exhausting night, this assault was clearly no simple task. However, in this situation, the divisional generals displayed leadership. Sensing the soldiers' fatigue, they led the assault in the forefront, and their bravery encouraged the soldiers to attack. Divisional General Kleber was one of the first to climb the wall, but at that very moment, he suffered a serious head wound. Divisional General Menu also was hit in the head by a stone and was knocked from the wall. Yet, after an hour of battle, the defense was breached. Bonn's division, attacking the city from the east, was the first to break in and finally overcome resistance. After that, Alexandria's defenders wavered and begged for mercy, fearing that the city would be looted and burned. However, their fears were in vain in this case. Discipline in Bonaparte's army was extremely strict. Even before the landing, the commander-in-chief issued a series of orders aimed at combating looting and violence. According to these orders, anyone, regardless of rank, who committed robbery, extortion, or violence against the local population would be immediately shot in front of the formation. On that day, about 250 people were wounded. Among the wounded were Division Generals Kleber, Menu, and Lescal. I ordered all the wounded to be transported to the Capuchin monastery, which eventually became a highly frequented establishment. The rest of our troops set up camp amidst the ruins of Alexandria. On this day, one of our soldiers was stung by a scorpion, which was much larger than the European ones. The soldier was greatly frightened by the sting. I immediately treated the sting site with an alkaline solution, and fortunately, it helped, and the soldier got off lightly. Around noon, the city was under complete control, and the French tricolor flag fluttered over the formidable citadel of Kate Bay. Soon, transport ships began to enter the city's port, and the French began a massive unloading of supplies, artillery, and all other equipment. Bonaparte also got to work. His top priority was to gain the trust and goodwill of the local residents at any cost. The population of Egypt was around 7 million people, and it was essential to prevent a popular uprising. The French declared that they had infinite respect for Islam and were not at war with Muslims. The fight was exclusively against the Mamluks, who had exploited this magnificent land, and such an approach to the population of Egypt was not without reason. The Mamluks and their leaders cared very little for the well-being of the people of Egypt. Knowing nothing but horsemanship and warfare, they lived in palaces, actively exploiting the peasants. Therefore, the fight against the Mamluks could indeed find support among the residents. Right after the French troops occupied Alexandria, Bonaparte was presented with the city's commandant and other prominent figures. Arriving at the headquarters in the morning, I found Bonaparte surrounded by the city's dignitaries and members of the previous government. Receiving the oath of allegiance from the city's commandant, Bonaparte said to him, "I took you prisoner with your weapons in hand. I could have treated you as a prisoner, but you showed courage, and since I believe that this is inseparable from honor, I return your weapons to you, and I hope you will serve the Republic faithfully, just as you did the previous authorities." Additionally, all Muslim captives were released. Also, an order was immediately issued to ensure that all the city's mosques continued their services. On the same day, Bonaparte ordered a large number of proclamations to be posted around the city and distributed to the residents in French, Arabic, and Turkish languages. Their primary message conveyed that the French were friends of the Egyptian people and were exclusively at war with the Mamluks. As a result, the situation in Alexandria stabilized quite quickly, and residents began returning to their homes. Within a few days, the city's muftis and sheikhs signed a joint declaration pledging their allegiance to the commander-in-chief. He solemnly accepted and reassured them. Bedouins also arrived in Alexandria to get acquainted with the French. The sight of these desert dwellers excited the soldiers' curiosity, and everything they saw in the French army stirred great interest in Bedouins too. They touched everything and examined the French personal belongings with great curiosity. An agreement was reached with the Bedouins as well. They undertook to guard the roads leading from Alexandria, sell 300 horses and 500 dromedaries to the French, and lease 1,000 Bactrian camels. After that, a common meal was served, and the Bedouins dined with the commander-in-chief. However, the French had no intention of staying in Alexandria, and soon they began preparing for the march to Cairo, where Murad Bey had already started gathering his army. Before embarking on the campaign to Cairo, Bonaparte addressed the people of Egypt. People of Egypt, you will be told by our enemies that I have come to destroy your religion. Believe them not. Tell them that I have come to restore your rights and punish your usurpers. Tell them that I respect not the Mamluks, but God, His Prophet, and the Quran. Tell them that all men are equal in the eyes of God, and that wisdom, talents, and virtue alone constitute the difference between them. And what are the virtues which distinguish the Mamluks that entitle them to appropriate all the enjoyments of life to themselves? But God is just and merciful, and He hath ordained that the empire of the Mamluks shall come to an end. Thrice happy those who shall side with us, they shall prosper in their fortune and their rank. Happy they who shall be neutral, they will have time to become acquainted with us and will range themselves upon our side. But woe, threefold woe, to those who shall arm for the Mamluks and fight against us. For them there will be no hope, they shall perish.